Redford, and today I have the pleasure of conducting an interview with Merete Engell from Denmark. Merete is a keen traveler who has many years of experience with humanitarian work due to her long career with the international organization Médecins Sans Frontières, otherwise known as MSF or Doctors Without Borders. Merete is a trained nurse and has been a recipient of a Florence Nightingale Medal for her nursing work as part of MSF, where she was posted to a number of conflict zones and hotspots around the world. Currently, she is the head of learning and development at MSF in Copenhagen, Denmark. She is also a member of the LGBTQI+ community and an avid traveler who often travels alone with her daughter. Welcome, Merete. Thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Yuri. Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be asked to participate in this interview, so I really look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to meet you. And so you've had so many amazing experiences over the years, but let's begin by talking a little bit about your early life. You grew up in Denmark, is that right?
Yes, I did. Yeah, in the Copenhagen area. Yeah.
Right. It's a beautiful city, wonderful country. Can you tell us a little bit about your early years and perhaps how your interest in travel developed? Do you remember your first international trip that you took?
Yeah, my mother, she was from Finland and came here during Second World War as one of those Finnish war children. And therefore, my childhood, I have a big brother and a smaller brother. We would go to Finland or to Sweden, where my father's brother was. So that was the extent of my traveling experience when I was young. I have never been outside Scandinavia with my family. And I was just always felt this curiosity to go, and I was always asking my parents if we could go somewhere else. But you know, this is the way that it was in the 70s. I'm a old woman, and therefore, when I went to the youth club at the age of 14. They had this course where you could sign up, and then you would get a trip to Switzerland and to do hiking in the mountains with this Swiss army ranger kind of guy. And we were some people signing up, and I signed up with my friend, and we would go hiking. I'm not a very physical person, so we would go hiking, not something that I enjoyed so much, but I knew that this was my ticket actually to get a travel. So I was ready to do anything. So when I was 14, I exited Scandinavia for the first time, and we went to Switzerland, where we started to hike in the mountains. And at that point, I had never seen a mountain, and because Denmark is very flat, and the part of Sweden and Finland where we used to go did not have very tall mountains. So I was just, I guess, caught from that moment. And I really, really enjoyed it, and I was so curious. And from there on, I just took any opportunity I could to go traveling. So I was big secret. I was the member of the Cliff Richard fan club. So yeah, in 1986, when I was 16, it was possibility to go to London to see a musical that he was in. I was like, yes, let's go. And when I was 17, I went to Ibiza for my first party travel. So and all of it was, you know, opportunities I just took to go traveling. And then when I finished high school, I knew that I needed to go travel. I had settled down with a boyfriend. We bought a house, and the only thing I could see in my horizon was just to get married and get kids, and that was it. And I just felt slowly suffocating. So I just broke out of all of that, and then I went to Israel, as many people did in my generation, as volunteers in the kibbutzes in Israel. So I stayed there twice, over 8 months, 2 years in a row, and was really fascinated about this. And that's also where I decided how my future life should be. That's where I found myself, if you can say it like that. So yeah, long answer to a short question, but it's really been the curiosity that always been driving me, and still is.
I would absolutely agree. Curiosity is the main driver. And I think most people's travel journeys, or how they came to travel, is quite a winding road. So that's really interesting. Did you imagine at the time, I mean, when you were younger, that you would go on to spend time in so many countries and have such an international career?
Not when I was that young. I knew that I knew that I had a drive for something. I just hadn't found my calling, if you can say it like that. So I knew that I really wanted to do something with my life, and maybe that's also why I felt so suffocated in a relationship, and just the fact of buying a house and settling down at the age of 21. So that's, the drive was there, and I guess, as many people in the travel community can probably testify to, you feel very much alive when you travel. You feel life in a different way, and that's what I experienced in a very young age. And that's just, I knew that I just couldn't, be in that frame that was expected of me, and that's why the
Definitely.
drive just put me out there.
We are a different breed, I have to say. So that's fascinating. Now, moving on to your work experiences abroad, which obviously has played such a huge part of your career. During your many years with MSF, you've experienced working in a variety of countries, many of which were conflict zones. Can you tell us a little bit about where you worked and what it was like being on the ground in these places?
Yeah, I would actually like to start a bit earlier though, because it was very much connected to my travel in Israel, because I got to work with in the nursing home in the kibbutz. So I was working with old people who had actually been in concentration camps during the Second World War, and then had immigrated to Israel after, and I found that the meeting. The cultural meeting, the situation of nursing, the traveling was something that I enjoyed, all of it, all of a sudden. And then I thought, okay, what can I do with this? Because at this point in time, I had no idea what I wanted to be. And
Right.
I just thought, okay, so maybe what I could do with my life is actually humanitarian work. So I could go travel, I could meet people, and I could, help people. So that's why I became a nurse. And as soon as I could, after nursing school, I started to work with MSF. So I started out in Ethiopia, and then I worked in Afghanistan, and I worked in Liberia, in Darfur, in Congo, in Niger, Haiti, Libya, Iraq, many different places. And I think I started out being. It was an adventure, and the part about helping other people was really a secondary win, if you can say it like that. It was really about having a different life, having an adventurous life, to travel, to see things, to meet people, to the curiosity again, and starting out with humanitarian work, I was so naive and I was so young, and I had no clue what I was doing, and I had no sense of what the world was really like, in my book. and it slowly, for the more times that I would go out and work, the more layers to the onions would come on, and I would start to think about why are people sick here? What are the conditions? What's the political situation? What's the situation for women? And how can we help in the best possible way without just being white doctors and nurses, coming and taking any kind of autonomy away from local population, and so on and so on. So I think working on the ground in the beginning, I was, like I said, very naive. But the more I got to know these places, because it's a very special thing to work in a conflict zone, for example, because you not only do you have people who are extremely bad off, if you can say it like that. They many of them, when they live in refugee camps or things like that, they are 100% depending on aid from others. It's you feel very close to the people. You always feel very overwhelmed because there is so much to do and you're just a drop in the ocean. But I figured out that one by one patient I help, next patient I help, next patient I help. And those are the small things that I had to take. And the next layer of the onion was really all the poverty, the inequality between men and women, for example, situation of women. It was the security situation, because that was a big thing. I think I had I'm a bit all over the place now, I know, but I think, when you come to a conflict zone and you come to help people and you represent a neutral, impartial organization, and you just want to help people, and you have the best intentions, I think, we put on a vest that says, okay, so this is my armored vest, so nothing is going to happen to me. And I think for a long time, that's how I felt, that, I can just float on the waters here and nothing is going to harm me because I have the best intentions. But it didn't go that way because slowly I realized that I was as much as the local population in danger and so on. So there are so many different aspects to that. How is it like working on the ground? I can just say one thing: everything is different than what you know.
Okay.
And everything is difficult, and everything you need to learn over and over again. I usually say just having your morning coffee can be a challenge sometimes.
It makes us really realize what we take for granted at home.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's
it's funny thing, when I come home, I marvel at the fact that I can put on the lights.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
I forgot to flush the toilet because I've been sitting on a hole for so long. So I forget to flush the toilet when I come home. Those kind of small things is just amazing.
It really helps to put things in perspective.
Yeah.
So you worked in quite a range of countries. Did you find more of a connection with certain ones, or were they all unique and memorable in their own way?
Yes and yes. It's when you work alongside a local community in the worst hour of need, you really see individuals, you see a population, you see a culture, you see circumstances, and you see a lot of I saw a lot of suffering, obviously, and disease and things like that, and everybody is unique, but every place is also unique. But there are definitely places where I have felt more strongly connected than others, and I think my most amazing deployment was when I was in Afghanistan, and that was so different from anything else that I have ever done before or since, because I was living in a little village on the border of the Wakhan corridor and Tajikistan, and I lived there for 7 months, and I was actually also alone there for long periods of time, and I was working in a small clinic together with the Afghan staff, and it's a long time ago. It was just when the war started in 2001 that I stayed the winter there until June 2002. And it was before there was a lot of terrorism and attacks on organizations and stuff like that. So I could move around quite freely as long as I, would adhere to whatever gender norms and rules that they had. But I was a non-gender, so I could navigate both within the female world, but also the male world. So I was allowed, as the only woman in that area, to, for example, go to the bazaar. And when I would go there would be like 500 men, and then me. And I was not allowed to wear a burqa because I was a foreigner. So security-wise, they had to see that I was a foreigner. And the fact that I was there for such a long time, and I was working in the clinic, and I was helping women deliver babies, and all of those things really gave me a very special status that also meant that they invited me in. And I would go to their weddings, and I would deliver their babies, and I would, go to their school, and those kinds of things, and I will never forget it. And it's so funny because when I speak to people, I always say that the most warm and kind and welcoming people that I've ever experienced are the Afghans. And I keep on saying that because I think it's very important, because Afghanistan has such a reputation that it has, and this terrible circumstance that they're in. But I got to live with them, and it was really, really an amazing thing. So that really stands out for me.
I'm so glad to hear that, because Afghanistan also holds a very special place in my heart among all the countries I visited. And I would really agree that they are very hospitable people. And I wish the world knew more about this. It actually leads on to my other question that I put to quite a lot of big travelers. Do you feel that the mass media accurately portrays how life is in these places? What's your take on that?
No, I don't.
Hear the answer
there. I mean, I've done enough news interviews from different disasters and to know what the angle is, you know, and you always see the worst kind of portrait of what's going on, and it's such a short, condensed time that you actually get to speak about it, or they show. And they always stand where the rubble, you know, where the rubble is the worst in the back, and those kinds of things. And, you know, sometimes you have the people interest story, and that's also nice. But again, you know, everything has to be newsworthy, you know, and therefore it's always, you know, the worst of the worst. And I hope that, you know, I always see those things on television. I just hope that people will, you know, pick up a newspaper and read about these things as well. Or, you know, even better, go have a look yourself and see how it's like. Because I feel many times when I travel and when my colleagues from MSF, they go to different places, Gaza or Ukraine or wherever it is at the moment, that people become very, oh, that's so dangerous. It's so dangerous. Yeah. But it is dangerous in Gaza. That we can agree. It's also dangerous in Ukraine. We can agree on that. But working with a humanitarian organization in a war zone means also that there is a big security apparatus that helps you, and it means that you know, there is always a risk that when you go. But there are big parts of a country in conflict, or a country that has a natural disaster or something like that, that is calm, and where people live their normal lives as well, and that's not being portrayed. And if there's one thing that I know, it's that no matter what they show on television, the humanitarian disasters is always filled with innocent civilians, and primarily women and children, and we don't see that enough.
Yeah, that is so true, and it was really something that occurred to me a lot as well on my own travels. Just how much the media portrays just a certain side of things, and that's mostly quite sensationalistic, and how the life on the ground in reality may be quite different to what we see on the news. So
what I usually say is that, you know, if, for example, in Denmark, which is a very small country, you know, if something happens in Denmark, you know, 300 kilometers from here, there's a bomb exploding or something like that, I would in Copenhagen not, you know anything about it, you know, until it goes on the news. But if people in other countries, they would say, oh, Merete, she lives in Copenhagen, I wonder if she's okay. And it's like, you know, the country you're in becomes the size of a small island in the minds of other people when you're there, you know. And what I usually say, you know, if you hear about something, call home, because that's the way your parents or your loved ones will feel, is that the country becomes very small when these things happen.
It does, and you don't realize that there's, you know, where the distance is. It's just something that they see on the news that affects them. So considering the vast range of experiences you've had abroad, it would be great to hear some of your own personal travel highlights or recommendations. I know you mentioned Afghanistan as one of them. Are there any other particular travel memories that stand out, or what would you say some of your favorite places in the world are?
Yeah, I think, you know, I've been thinking about this question for a few days, and it's quite difficult for me to say, because I think, you know, I'm always the kind of person who goes to a new place next time. So I rarely come back to the same place again, because my life is short and there are still many things that I want to see. So I like to go to new places all the time to see. I think there are. I like big nature. Let's say it like that. Yeah, big nature. I'm not a very physical person. You know, I don't go hiking for 3 days or climb a mountain or something like that. I like road tripping and to look at nature.
That's definitely a type of travel that, that's very popular. Road tripping enables you to see many things in one trip, great distances. So yeah, nature is one. Do you have a preference for, say, the beach or desert or jungle or a specific type of nature?
I like Finland very much, but that's also because I've been there many times by now. I visit my family and I do road trips there, and I go to new places and things like that. So I like that kind of nature that just goes on and on and on. Because in Denmark, again, being such a small country, nature is always very regulated by humans. You always, you don't go into a forest in Denmark and you can't be out within 1 hour, So when I go somewhere in nature, I really enjoy the fact that I have no clue what's going to happen on the other side of a forest or something like that. I really enjoy deserts. I think that they're fascinating places. And I took my daughter a couple of years ago. We went to the Wadi Rum in Jordan. Yeah. And I'm a big Star Wars fan as well. So, for me, it was just to go to Wadi Rum had been a dream of mine for a long time. It's very commercialized in many ways, but I also think it's quite easy to get off the beaten track and just to get that, horizontal view where you have when you just want to see what lies behind the next rock and so on and so on. So I enjoy deserts, not when it's really, really hot, because I was living in Darfur in the Sahara Desert for 5 months in a tukul when I was working with MSF, and it was like 50 degrees, and that was way too hot. But I really enjoy desert. I'm not very much a beach person. I after half a day on the beach, I get impatient, and I think okay, so there must be something to see here that I haven't seen.
I would share that sentiment. Deserts hold a place in my heart as soul-stirringly beautiful places, and I have a great affection for them. But the conditions can be quite harsh. I agree. The heat is something you have to deal with. But what would you say? Tell us a little bit about your travel style. I mean, you've done lots of travels. Do you prefer traveling on a budget, or going mid-range, or luxury travel? And do you tend to plan, or do you like to go with the flow and be spontaneous and flexible?
Yeah, I think I go mid-range. When I work with MSF, it was very easy for me to just book myself in a hostel somewhere. But as I got older, I became a bit more comfortable. So I usually go mid-range. And especially when I travel with my daughter, I enjoy to come back to a clean hotel room, for example. And I really like road trips. So I've been doing road trips many different places in the world. I plan trips myself, so I don't really book with any travel agents. So I find a local guide or a local taxi sometimes, but I usually have pinpointed where is it that I want to go. Because when I visit a country, and especially with my daughter, I would like to go different places, so we have the opportunity to get, a bit of the essence of the country. So I would like to have the city, I would like to have the countryside, I would like to have nature, for example, specific. I like to visit UNESCO World Heritage sites, and to do that, it differs from country to country how I do it. So I usually have some pinpoints, and maybe I booked a few hotels, but sometimes I just book as we go along, especially on the road trips, because sometimes we don't know how far we're going to go in one day. So I just, booking.com, Airbnb, with 2 hours notice is often what I do, depending on where we're going. Yeah.
That's so true. I mean, I guess it's all about adapting, because so much depends on the location and duration and who you're with. So adaptation is key.
And it's so easy. I mean,
yeah, it is. It's with technology these days, you have so many tools at your fingertips. You mentioned your daughter a few times. Great point. And as you might know, Nomad Mania has monthly themes, and an upcoming one is travel with children. So you're a great person to ask, as you've done a lot of travel with your daughter. And I think we'd love to hear some of your experiences and insight on this topic. I understand that your daughter is now 12, almost
Yes.
13 years old.
Yeah.
Okay. And what age was she when you started traveling together?
Well, I got divorced when she was 3 years old, and then when she was 4, I decided that I wanted to see how it was to travel alone with her, because I always traveled with my ex-partner at that point, where we traveled together, and that was pretty easy. But traveling alone with a small child, so I had to try it out. So when she was 4, I booked a ticket to Paris, and
Wow.
I said to her, we're going to go to Paris, we're going to go up the Eiffel Tower, and then we're going to go out to Paris Disney. So that's what we did. And she loved every minute of it, and she was just like, wow, what is this? And where, and then I just realized that, okay, that's pretty easy. And then I just took it from there, little by little, expanding and going. What I often do is that I have a big global network of people that I work with and that I keep contact with. So almost everywhere where I go in the world, I would know somebody. So often I live with people where I take her, and then we live privately, and then maybe renting a car and going out, or taking some trips around the country or something like that. And that's really, it's really nice to do it that way, because then you also have a base, and you have somebody who maybe they have kids that Carla can stay with, and so on. So I didn't find it very difficult to begin with. We just came back from China and Japan a month ago. Yeah. And I was, sorry?
How did you find that? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, the problem was, though, that on the second day, I fell down the stairs on the Great Wall of China, and I broke my foot.
Yes. Wow.
And it's a good thing to be a nurse, but the problem was that I was alone with my daughter, and I've never experienced before being damaged myself or being sick on a travel. And I think, I became aware of my vulnerability and the vulnerability of us together when she's so young. I've always, said to her, okay, these are the phone numbers that you need to remember. Here is the, a text in English if something happens to you, and, all of these things. So try to secure myself. But I had that experience, and that was a bit scary, actually, to stand in a foreign land like that, and then all of a sudden have an injury, and not a lot of help inside, unfortunately. But in the end, we managed. We went to Japan, and I got to the emergency room, and I got the help that I needed, so that was okay. But yeah.
Getting through that, it just shows, when you're in a vulnerable position, there's a language barrier sometimes, and it can be quite scary. So, kudos to you for getting through that and having, a memorable trip anyways.
Yeah.
So in your view, what are some of the biggest challenges involved in traveling with a child? I know you mentioned that you had a lot of help and a large network, but was there a particular age that you found especially challenging when it came to travel with her?
I think the current age, being a teenager, is a challenge. No, but I think there hasn't been a special age, but I think I learned as I went along with her, because I have been very ambitious about what I wanted to do. And we had to see this, and we had to do that, and all of these things. And I realized at some point after some travels where she started to be able to voice that herself, that I was being over ambitious. So a good example was I rented an RV in Iceland. and we drove 1,600 kilometers in 12 days, and we stayed in 10 different camping sites. And we drove all around the Iceland, on the Ring 1 it's called, and every day we would move. And I had planned like 2 or 3 activities during the day. Then we would go to a volcano, then we would go to the Blue Lagoon, and then we had to go hiking on a glacier, and then we would go to this beach, and then we would, and I could see her. She was like, "Oh, it's enough, Mom, come on," And after that, I realized that, she needs the time to settle down a few days,
Yeah.
and the sites that I want to see is my bucket list.
Yeah.
And for her, if there's a swimming pool and she can get a burger and we could look at a pretty view, she's also happy,
That's
So
true.
I changed my way of traveling like that to saying that everywhere we go, we will stay at least 2 nights.
Right.
So not one night and then you go on, and one night and then you go on, and one night. And that's especially for the road trips, obviously.
Yeah. No,
So for
I can see myself being quite guilty of that as well, because you tend to want to pack a lot into a schedule, but you realize that downtime is actually quite important, because as fun as travel is, sometimes it can be quite tiring. So definitely. Would you say overall, though, that travel has been a good way to teach her about the world and to educate your daughter?
It's exactly the reason why I've done it. And I think that when we travel, we become better people, because we get to know other cultures, other people. We see that we're all the same and we have equal worth. And the unknown doesn't become so scary. And I want her to see the world as her oyster as well, And she was like, when we came home from Japan, a few weeks ago, she was like, "Mom, I want to spend 1 year in Japan, when I finish school." And it's just like, yes, that's exactly what I want. I don't want her to feel afraid about going into the world, because I think a lot of people are that, and I think a lot of racism and those kinds of things come from that. And I want her to experience that. So we also often try to visit children and schools and stuff like that, so she can see that we're all the same. We might have young girls with a headscarf on, but they still play football. You know what I mean? And I've actually made a whole concept of it that I call the Globetrotter education. And the Globetrotter education is about lifelong learning coming from travels. And I do this, this whole concept of funny posters, treating our travel as a school, and what is it that we actually learn from it, and she enjoys that so much as well. So we do it on social media, and she helps me out now to say what she thinks that we should focus on.
That is so great. I mean, the impact of travel is truly incredible, life-changing, I might say. And I, too, am a big believer in the power of travel to broaden horizons. It's great that she has this, and has you for a mom. I mean, so lucky. I know that at her age, kids tend to be quite interested in what their peers are doing. So I'm interested in, what do her friends think of her travels? I mean, she's traveled so extensively with you. What do her peers think?
When I asked her the other day, she said, "They miss me." Okay. But I can understand that, of course. But she also says that they think it's quite cool, because she likes to talk about maybe not so much what she experienced, but maybe, where we're going and what are we going to do, and those kinds of things. And I think maybe some of them think that it's great and they would like to try the same thing. But I don't think it's something that they probably use so much energy on at this point in time. I can feel that for many points that she's very developed in her way of thinking about the world. That is beyond what would be expected at her age. She's concerned with politics, for example, and geopolitical stuff, and she's worried about Trump and those kinds of things, because we talk about that. she knows extensively much about women in Afghanistan, and those kinds of things. And
That is amazing.
yeah, it was actually quite a funny example because we took a little road trip down to Munich. I think it was last year, and on the way we made a stop over in Wittenberg, which is the town where Martin Luther had his church, and where the whole Protestantism came from. That is the predominant religion here in Denmark. And I just read on Google what goes on here, and then we tried to talk about it, going through this church and everything. And then when she came back to school after that vacation, the first topic they had in history was about Martin Luther and about Protestantism. And then she was like, and all of a sudden she could use her knowledge for something. And she said, it's so much better to be there and to actually see it and feel it than to sit and read about it in the book. So I always try to balance, the history lessons, the politic lesson, the social lessons with going to the beach or to places where she would like to experience something, so that we get a good balance.
That's brilliant. University or school for life, as they say. I'm a big believer of that as well. So has she talked about what she wants to be when she grows up? I mean, would she like to do something similar to you, perhaps, with her awareness of what's going on in the world?
Yeah, she said to me not long ago, she said, "Mom, I think I will continue to travel when I grow up. And I will also travel with you." So I was like, okay, thank you. But she wants to be a costume designer. So she's very creative. So she would like to make costumes for movies and theaters and stuff like that. So she's a big, cosplay, role player.
Oh, right. Well, she'll have a good time in Japan then.
She did. Yeah, that was quite funny. Yeah. So that's what she wants to do.
A place that you've been can really motivate someone to want to go there and visit again in the future. Has she mentioned any other places that she would like to visit?
I think Japan was very much the top of her bucket list. That's for sure. And so that was really wonderful when we went there, even though I had a broken foot. But we managed. She would like to go to Australia because she has a friend who comes from Australia. So she heard a lot about that. And she would also like to go back to France. And I said, yeah, but we've been there already. But yeah, I guess we can go. And then she wants to go to the US. And she also says, Mom, I would like to try to go to Africa with you. But I don't think maybe I'm old enough yet. So she does have a sense of the fact that Africa can be a bit difficult to travel in compared to other places where we've been. So I think I will bring her there. But we have a world map. I'm actually at her room here, so we have a world map that we look at and figure out where is our next trip and what is our top 3 and where can we go.
So, looking ahead to the future, you are a person that has already experienced so much. So thinking ahead, do you have any specific travel plans or goals that you're pursuing, like a bucket list? Or do you really decide along with your daughter, depending on the moment?
Yeah, I think I very much have a bucket list. And I've always felt about my bucket list that it's something that you have to live, you have to remember to cross them off and not just have them as dreams. And that's what I'm trying to teach her. I think my bucket list right now is very much South America, because for some reason or other, I've never been to South America. So I would love to go and see that part of the world, because I've been to so many other parts where, similar cultures and so on over a wide, vast area. But I've never experienced South America with all these different cultures, obviously. So I would really very much like to go there. She doesn't really think so much about it. Every time I've asked her in the last couple of years, where do you want to go? She's like, Japan. So now we've been there. So now she has to cultivate a new place. Yeah. I think I don't have any problem traveling anywhere in the world. And as you introduced me, I also identify as LGBT, and it's I try not to focus on that, but because when we are traveling, nobody needs to know, obviously. No matter where and no matter what legal situation or discrimination that we would experience if people knew. It's but it is becoming more and more present for us. And I remember a time when we were in Borneo in the middle of the rainforest, and I rented a local taxi, and this old guy was driving us around, and he was very, very nice to us and very nice to Carla. And we've been together with him for a couple of days. And then she says to me in Danish, "Mom, can I tell Mohammed that I have two moms?" And we were in the middle of the rainforest in Borneo, and Mohammed was a very devout Muslim, and he would go to the mosque every time we would stop for lunch and things like that.
Right.
And I didn't have any, thoughts on how Mohammed would, I didn't have any, I was not afraid that he was going to react in a bad way, or I didn't know him that way. But it just said, when we are in a place like this and we are depending on another person that we don't know very well, we don't talk about it, and I think that she's becoming more and more aware of that, because he also sometimes asks questions about, how is it to be LGBTQIA plus in this place, and then we also talk a bit about it, also just to show, how it is for other people to be in minority some places, right? And I think those are the things that also make us appreciate the fact that we live in Denmark, because here we can live however we want, and we can choose to love whoever we love, and that's unfortunately not the case in the whole world.
That's another big lesson. It was for me as well. I mean, with that community, and also just different things like for women and men, and even with children, you realize that standards are so different around the world, and there is that whole awareness of that. It's a big learning point. But I mean, that's so true. Merete, this has been so interesting. I mean, I'm sure you'll be inspiring so many people with your experiences. So in closing, for those looking to travel as much as you have, I mean, you've had some amazing experiences and great insight, especially with a child or your children in tow. What is one piece of advice you can offer?
Just do it. I really think that travel is actually easier with a child, because there is a kind of a warmth, or a wish to connect. I think it's a bit like having a puppy, when you go walking, everybody wants to talk to you. And I think it's a bit like the same with a child, so don't be afraid that, obviously you shouldn't go to a war zone with your child, but I think you can get off the beaten track very much, even with a child, because I think you will meet people generally friendly to you when they can see that you travel with a child. So I think that's really my first advice. And then, my second one is that, just remember that your bucket list is maybe not the same as your child's, and you should also remember to make sure that you have stuff in your itinerary that makes sense for your child at whatever age this child must be. So
that is brilliant advice, and good to keep in mind. Couldn't have said it better myself. It's much appreciated, Merete, and thank you so much for your time today. It's been really enlightening to speak with you and get your insight, as well as that of your daughter. She seems like a really wise person for her age, and I'm certain you both will inspire. Best.
Now I think we lost you a bit, Yui.